Hello, welcome to my first video on my idea for this book club. So I'd like to start off by saying this is all an experiment and I have no idea what I'm doing, but why not try it out and then work out the kinks as I go. So last month for October, the book was The Heart-Led Leader, which I read on my Kindle, and this is by Tommy Spaulding. The book was selected from the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force reading list, and we did a vote on that. So originally I did not want to read that one. I wanted to read another one on the list, but after reading and picking it, I'm actually very happy that I read it. It was something, good perspectives on leadership and loving those around you and those subordinates that you might have, or people you work with, or coworkers, and that's often something we don't always think about. And so I thought that book was very beneficial. And Lana wants to be in the video too, right? Alright, so I'll just try to make this quick. I have a few notes or a few highlights that I got on the book, and I'll just talk about some things I highlighted and some takeaways I had from this book. So first one, when you sit down in my office, and this is from the book, when you sit down in my office and I ask you what your mind is like, what your heart is like, what is happening with your family, that's uncomfortable. And you have to be a strong, disciplined leader to do it consistently with each of your teams and your team members. But it's important if you want to build high-performance teams, because if you don't understand someone's heart, you won't ever have full trust. And I think that's something that I've experienced being a first-line supervisor and flight chief for my work center. And a lot of times, you just want to talk about business. You don't ever want to talk about personal things with people. But after reading this book, I think it is important, because a lot of times, I know as me talking to some like higher leadership or my boss, it's always good to try to know that we're all humans at the end of the day, and there's things that people go through day to day, and it's important to understand those things that someone might be going through to help them out as the day goes by, or to better understand why their performance is lacking today, or why someone isn't the way they're acting today. And it all starts with getting to know your people. Next one, I chased these achievements in part because of my passion for leadership. But in reality, it was more because this is what society expected of me. It's what society expects of all of us, to build a resume. And I think out of all the book, this is the one that resonates with me the most, because in the Air Force, we're like that, where you're trying to get your EPR to a point where eventually your commander will sit down and make a determination whether you will promote or promote now, or you could be in senior NCO trying to get a wing stratification, and what you do throughout the year will weigh heavily upon that resume that we have. And a lot of the things we do and a lot of achievements we seek are to build that resume. And that's something that our organization and society expects of us. But this part in the book really stood out to me, because I see it day to day, and I see that a lot of people do pursue this because it's what is expected of us. And I'm not saying just throw caution to the wind and don't do it anymore, but with heart-led leadership, leaving that heart print, like the book says at the end, is also very important. Chief Wilson did a professional development seminar for the 5-6 Club, and he mentioned something that also stuck with me was, hey, as a leader, I'll be in charge of whether you promote or not. You, on the other hand, you make sure that your colleagues and your subordinates, that you build them up and you help them succeed, and don't be too focused on yourself. So that just goes hand in hand with this book, and I just thought it was interesting that this was something in there that connected them together for me. Alright, next quote, I'm not defined by my medals and my accomplishments. Tommy, he said, I'm defined by the people who love me and those I love and serve in return. And this part of the book, he's talking about a guy he goes and visits that was a Olympian, and he was surprised when he met this guy because he had nothing, no medals, no certificates, no, a me wall, sort of say. A lot of us have those in our offices where it's like, hey, this is all about me section. These are all my accomplishments that I'm proud of. But in the book, he talks about how he met this guy, and he had none of that. He was an Olympic athlete, Olympic champion, and had no medals, had no pictures, didn't even mention it one single time throughout the whole trip that he was in the Olympics. Nothing about that. So once again, he writes, when he asked Tommy, hey, why don't you have any of these medals, or why don't you showcase any of your accomplishments? He said, I'm not defined by my medals and my accomplishments. I'm defined by the people who love me and those I love and serve in return. So I thought that was pretty powerful stuff. I know I've met some people in my career where they don't have things in their offices, and who knows, it might be the same kind of concept, but I thought that was really interesting, and it makes me kind of rethink of what I display in my office, because I would like people to define me as the person I am and how I am with others, instead of just all these things that I accomplished. Alright, next one. His words reminded me of an idea that has been on my mind for many years. I call it the I-we ratio. The premise is simple. Whenever I listen to a leader speaking, I take out a small notebook and put check marks on a page when I hear the word I or we. I found it to be an incredible predictor of whether someone is a servant leader or a self-serving leader. I thought this was really cool because that's something I intentionally try to do when I talk about work center, or just something where I know I'm part of a group, and I try not to say I always try to say we or us or our, and I thought that was really cool that this guy wrote about it in his book, because it's something that I've always kind of done, but now he speaks to it in the book, and I'd be interested next time you hear someone talk, or a servant leader talk, how many times they use I versus we, and it probably really is a good predictor of whether or not someone is a servant leader. So that's cool. So he goes through the book and he talks about, a lot of the book is anecdotal evidence of leaders and people he's met throughout his life, and each chapter so he talks about 18 inches from your brain to your heart. So he divides the book into 18 chapters, and each chapter is focused on a different kind of discipline. And each discipline, he talks about someone's story and how to reinforce that value, I should say, instead of discipline, value. And, just a few highlights from that. And one of them is, know your people, know everything about them, know everyone. One of the things I highlighted in the book is he went and met with the CEO, and he wrote in his book, he not only knew the names of every employee, but also knew something special about most of them. I know in my experience, when people talk about great commanders or great leaders, they always say, hey, this person knows every single, he knows or she knows every individual's name in the organization. And not only that, you know every special thing about them. So that's something that I need to work on. I know with security forces and leading a bunch of people, it's hard, but I will continue to develop that skill, because I know it's important, and they speak to it in this book. Alright, next highlight I had, respect the person, not the position. I think that is an ideal that all leaders should strive for. People are hungry for heart-led leaders who are genuine, and they aren't fooled by disingenuousness. That is another good one that I respect a lot. And I know a lot of times, especially with the military, professional arms, we have rank. The moment you sell on a rank, you therefore have that authority. But a lot of times, people may not respect you as a person, but have to respect your authority. So this just goes, you want to be genuine. You want to be genuine, and you want people to really know who you are, and they'll know. A lot of people will know if you're doing it for the right reasons or not. There's another story in the book that talks about going out golfing and being, a type of person where there is all these high-ranking business people that would go golfing, and the caddies would have to determine amongst themselves who they would want to go assist with on these people golfing with. And the caddies, there's a certain individual that was a heart-led leader in the book that had the caddies drawing straws just to be able to go work for that person. And that part I highlighted because he says in his book, is anyone drawing straws to hang out with me? So as a leader, is anyone, are the people I supervise or oversee or work with, are they drawing straws to be able to hang out with me or work with me? So I think that's a key idea when thinking about the values in this book. Kind of like in the Air Force with the core values, always do the right thing even when no one's looking, right? Integrity first. That's highlighted in the book. A very powerful one that I've heard multiple times in my career is make us choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never be content with a half truth when the whole truth can be won. And that is it's a simple thing to say as a leader, but it's always very hard to implement. To choose the harder right as opposed to the easier wrong. Just because something's simple doesn't mean it's hard. And oftentimes, if you are a good leader or heart-fed leader, you're going to have to make that harder right because it's the right thing to do. As a leader, another great quote that from the book, the way I look at it is that leaders need to design an organization they would want to work for. So as a leader, look at your organization and look at where you're involved in and think, would I want to work for this? If not, then how can I make this a better environment that I would want to work for? Going back to leaders and being genuine, here's another quote. What most people want in a leader is someone they can relate to. People want to humanize their leaders. Showing vulnerability allows that to happen. And vulnerability is a big thing that I'm learning now recently within the last few years. And a lot of times you have to think, all right, you're the alpha male or the alpha, kind of character trait, and you always have to be in a position where you don't show any emotions and you can't show any weakness, right? But vulnerability plays a huge role in actually helping your team come together because it humanizes you, and people could then relate to you and understand that we're all here together as a team and not one person can do everything, and that's important. And the last highlight I would argue that the organization that focuses on these things, on serving others, on impacting others positively, and on leading with your heart, is the organization that will always win for tomorrow. And I do believe that. The Air Force always preaches, whatever organization you're in, they always preach that, humans, the people are the biggest weapon system we have. And that is the number one asset in whatever organization you have are the people. So just make sure you're impacting others positively, you're leaving heart prints on these individuals, and you're leading from the heart and keeping their interests, their best interests in mind, knowing who they are, and ultimately being comfortable being a vulnerable leader and caring about them, because then once tragedy hits, one day, and this has happened to me, one day you might need to ask that person for help, and vice versa. A lot of things could happen. So that's all the highlights I have for this book. Overall, I thought I really enjoyed this book, and it just really makes me think about how, as I go through my life and career, that it's more important to be a genuine person, a genuine leader, and help those around me that I can have control over, and probably focus less on certain things that are just about me, because as I help others out, I know that will come full circle, and eventually one day that'll help me out in return. So that's all I have for this book and this video. And like I said, the idea is to make a recap video maybe at the end of each book, just for those of you who can't read the book or didn't even read it, and maybe kind of like a Cliff Notes type of thing. I don't know. I have no idea, but yeah, it's a work in progress, so thank you for watching if you watched this whole thing, and that's all I got.